The Acolyte has arrived and it's brought with it the question of who the Sith Lord is in the show.
What are you?
Fans, myself included, have been going crazy looking for clues and picking out the tiniest of details to try and piece together the puzzle.
Here I come. Oh, here I come.
Now this is the part where you want to strap yourselves into your Jedi Starfighters, as there's one suspect that stands out from the crowd.
Who trained you?
Before we begin, remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoy it, and if you want to catch more of our Star Wars videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now without further ado, let's get into the mystery of the Sith in the Acolyte.
Steel or laser are no threat to them. But an acolyte kills without a weapon. An acolyte kills the dream.
Set 100 years before the rise of the Empire, the galaxy at the time of the Acolyte is said to be largely at peace. The Jedi Order is at the height of their power, whilst the Sith are lurking in the shadows, with most of the galaxy believing they're extinct. The idea of the Acolyte is to show us that this peace is subjective, and whilst the Jedi believe they found it, there are a few out there that haven't. May's working her way through a list of 4 Jedi that she wants to kill, as she believes they've wronged her in the past. Now I do think as the show goes on we'll learn more about the events that transpired on her homeworld, where she lost everything she'd ever known, with it likely becoming an evolving story throughout the course of the season. Now in the first 2 episodes we see May kill the first 2 Jedi in her list, with Master Zindara and Torbin, and while she's doing this for her own revenge, she's also under the watchful eye of the Sith. By the time we get to the ending of the Acolyte premiere, we see May meet the Sith, but her identity is still no closer to being revealed. Whilst there are a ton of theories floating around about it being Darth Tenebrous or Plagueis, I actually think it's a little bit more complex than that, and I'm going to throw a wild one out there and say that the Sith of the show is actually hiding in plain sight. Now towards the end of the second episode, May faces off against Master Soul. He probes her mind using the Force, and we learn that even she doesn't know who her master is. This tells us that not only is the Sith hiding their existence to the Jedi, but also to their own as well, showing the great lengths they're going through to keep their continued survival a secret. And come to think of it, it also opens up the possibility that May might not actually know that she's a Sith Acolyte either. Now for me it'd be totally impossible for a Sith to live an entire life in secret, as with any living thing in the galaxy, and the Sith that came before and after this time, they still need the basic essentials like food and water to survive. They can't go around constantly committing petty crimes at night to gain vital resources. It's an era where the Jedi are effectively operating as the galactic police force. They haven't really got any serious threats to deal with at the moment, so they find themselves dealing with smaller scale situations than we've ever seen them paying interest in before. For a Sith trying to keep their existence secret, committing petty crimes would eventually draw too much unnecessary attention. Instead, what the Sith do is effectively take on a day job, having a separate public persona. They tend to live the normal life as an everyday citizen, making their way in the galaxy. Now in Legends, Darth Tenebrous was a well-known ship designer, whilst Darth Plagueis was the head of a financial corporation. In the prequels we've got Dooku, who was the count of his home planet Sereno, so he was pretty much set for life, and Palpatine served in the Senate. Come to think of it, I wonder what Darth Maul's day job was. With his bubbly personality, you'd think he'd be well suited for working with the public.
At last we will have revenge.
So in order for the Sith Lord to successfully conceal their identities and survive, they also needed an everyday identity. Now, whilst we've spoken about Sith that are largely well off in the galaxy, it's fair to assume that there have also been some that aren't. Now, it's at this point in time we turn our attentions to the only other character in the show that has some kind of connection to the Sith, with that being May's mysterious accomplice Quaimir. The official Star Wars databank has Quaimir down as a former smuggler who now makes his living as a trader, procuring unusual things and enjoying a life of leisure. Now, from the moment we first met Quaimir, it's pretty clear that he has an invested interest in these murders, and he's not a big fan of the Jedi.
Like every Jedi, he only thinks he's found peace.
To me, it doesn't sound like he has a problem with them individually like May, but rather what they represent. It's understandable for a normal citizen with a foot in the galaxy's underworld to not like the Jedi for the way they police the galaxy. However, it is unusual for one to not like them to the extent that Quaimir does. He claims it's purely transactional.
Now I supply people like her with what they need for the right price.
However, we already know that's not the case, as he knows way too much about what she's up to, and he even speaks about her master. It's obvious that he's got an invested interest in her endeavours, and besides, we never actually saw her pay for the potion that he made her, and upon making the potion, we see May issue somewhat of a light threat to him, giving the impression that she's the one in charge of things out of the two, telling Quaimir that it wouldn't bode well for either of them if the master found out that she used the potion to kill Torbin. So, by May saying this, we now know Quaimir has direct links to the master outside of May, which means everything he knows regarding the Sith and her own objectives likely aren't solely down to what she's told him. Now this opens up a whole string of questions like, how does Quymere have these connections to the Sith? Was he introduced by May, or did they pair Quymere and May up? But the biggest question I have from it is, has May ever met the Sith alongside Quymere, or has she always been alone? That there would go a long way in cementing the reveal that I'm convinced is coming, that Quymere is the Sith Lord we're looking for. Now one of the biggest clues comes in May's first meeting with Quymere in the show, where he begins to recite the Sith code before she cuts him off repeating it herself, like she's heard him say it 1,000 times.
Peace is a lie, I know.
Clearly at this point it's been drilled into her head, but the biggest question here is, why would he know it if he's only helping May with her crimes? And although he may know her master, he isn't technically a part of the Sith. Now another interesting moment I noticed in episode 2 was when Osha went into Quaimere's shop to get a confession from him. As we all know, she eventually got it and the Jedi came rushing in to confront him, but before they did that, Quymere suspects something's up and takes a closer look at May, who we actually know is Osha.
You look exactly like her.
Now on the surface, we're led to believe that he's discovered the truth, that the cloaked person in front of him wasn't May, but rather her presumed to be dead twin sister Osha. But what if that wasn't the case at all? Now we know Osha's last name is Anasea, and therefore May's would be the same. But we also know they came from a coven of witches led by Mother Anasea, and it seems a tragedy took place in their past which resulted in the coven's death, with the twins losing their mothers and each other. Now it's strange to me how May blames the Jedi for what happened, whilst the Jedi and Osha blame May. Could there have been a third party involved back then that purposely pitted both sides against one another for their own personal gain? Let's say gaining an extremely powerful apprentice, which otherwise wouldn't have been possible with the coven around. I suspect we might find out May's ties to Quymere stem all the way back to her childhood on her home planet. After all, it's kind of the Sith's playbook to groom their apprentices from a young age, as we learnt with Palpatine. So was Quymere telling Osha she looked exactly like May? Actually, Quymere believing he was telling May she looks exactly like her mother? Now that could be another head game twisted manipulation to push her more towards the dark side by playing on the tragedy of her past. With all things considered, I personally feel Quymere is the main suspect in being the Sith under the helmet, hiding in plain sight of not only the Jedi and the Republic but also his acolyte, concealing his true identity behind a mask, as it's imperative for the Sith to remain a shadow. And let's bear in mind, May isn't a Sith apprentice yet, she's still only an acolyte. And as we've seen in episode 2, the Jedi are more than capable of probing her mind for answers. So concealing himself from her would eliminate the risk of the Jedi finding out the truth through the Force, but also, for a Sith that perhaps wasn't born into wealth like so many others, what better way to deflect who they really are than play the part of a moderately low-life criminal who's fallen into questionable situations in their time, but it's all in the name of credits, nothing more and nothing less, spending their days sitting around in a quiet store watching rotations tick on by, and perhaps enjoying a drink or three in the process. A character like this under normal circumstances would never find themselves on the radar of the Jedi Order as a potential threat. Now, moving away from what we've already seen in the show, I've also looked at the Sith's appearances in the TV spots for answers. We know from episode 2 that May's next target and the pair's next destination is going to be the Wookiee Jedi Cal Nuka on the planet of Kofar, where the Jedi's taken up residence in the forest there. Now, in the trailers and TV spots, other than the island scene with the Sith that we've already had in episode 1, the rest of the Sith's appearances take place in a forest. So, unless May and Quymere stop off on the island to pick up the Sith, and they travel to the relaxing forest getaway together for some downtime, this is a good indication that the Sith under the mask is actually Quymere himself, as he's not shown in any of the forest footage whatsoever. Now I want to know who you think the Sith is behind the mask in the Acolyte, and have you noticed any clues or details I've missed that supports or shoots down Quymere as the Sith Lord theory? As always, drop your thoughts, theories and wildest speculations down in the comments, leave a big old thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel to catch more Star Wars videos. We've got plenty more Acolyte ones on the way too, so thanks for checking out this video. I'll catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.